In conversation with Kelly Wilk. Kelly is a freelance writer who graduated from the University of Guelph with a HBA in theater and English. She creates poetry, memoirs, fiction, fantasy, and mixed media. From 2011 to 2019, she wrote for Pink Play magazine and their queer parenting blog. November 2019, Maclean magazine published a piece, A Widowed Mother to Her Son. Your small life was so powerful, it saved mine. She lived with her son in the beaches neighborhood of Toronto. And on today's episode of Photo Interview, it's my utmost pleasure, joy, and excitement to have on the show today, Kelly Wilk. How are you doing, Kelly?
I'm well, thank you very much.
It's nice having you on P English Literature.
Nice to be here.
Absolutely. We love having you today, and thank you so much for coming on. So, Kelly, I need to first say that I was taken aback by the description page of your book, The High-Flying Adventure of Captain Grief, a memoir about laughing in the face of death on Amazon. And I would like to ask you the many obvious question most authors get asked. What inspired you to write this book?
A big hot mess inspired me to write this book.
Wow.
I have always, for a very, very long time, really since before. Actually, it was around the same time that I met my writing coach that I met my wife, who this memoir is dedicated to. I
Wow.
really voiced when I was working with Chris Fraser, and I just jumped into telling my stories, and they just started coming out. I started telling my stories about my family's cabin on Manitoulin Island and all the ridiculous things that happened, and how I'm really glad that my cousins and I survived them. Um, and it was something. I've always been a storyteller, so memoir fit with me. And it's always worked for me to process my healing that way. And it started really when my father died when I was 19. I wrote a lot. When I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia when I was 12, I kind of wrote myself out of that. And then in 2012, when my partner got sick and died 2.5 weeks after she got sick with what we thought was pneumonia,
Mm.
I was really, really pissed. And my creative writing coach offered me a free blog workshop. So she gave me a couple of directives that I could do, but one of them was create a fictional character and blog with her. So I thought, I don't need a sappy poetry blog, which is what I was going to do. I need a superhero. I need a really rude, mean, unapologetic, possibly narcissistic superhero so I can have someone to yell at because I need someone to yell at. So I can't do a lot of swearing in the house. So I created a blog called The High Flying Adventures of Captain Brief with this ridiculous superhero that I could pick a fight with and would always be the bad guy. And that's what
Wow.
I said to do in the blog to basically try and write my way through the first year after Kara had passed and I was a single mom and a young widow suddenly. I needed a reason to laugh. And Kara's adage has always been you always have the choice to laugh. So I decided that laughter needed to be there and it healed me.
Wow.
It got me through that year. And when I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do as an artist, an editor pointed out to me, Kelly, you've already decided a course. This is what you write. Because that blog turned into the Ginger Menace, which was the queer parenting blog that I wrote with Pink Play. It had to be much more family oriented, way less f bombs.
Wow.
Um, but it all came from that year of me allowing myself to say and do what I needed to and not apologize for the way I grieved. People liked that, and suddenly on social media, the people that were following us, I was living under a microscope, so I figured I may as well say something interesting. And all these people wanted to talk about losing their parent, losing their friends, losing a child. Like they just came forward on social media and were having these amazing um, very cathartic conversations about loss. And I created this little community where it was safe to laugh, and it was safe to be angry, and it was safe to say the hard stuff, and it was safe to say, this is really stupid, but this is what my life is stuff. And how memoir helped me process the hardest thing that I've ever had to deal with in my life. So
I'm sorry to hear about your loved one's loss. Grief, it's painful, but it sounds like therapy and writing was important to you and it helped bring you through so much.
Yep.
With the listeners here, and for people who haven't read your book yet, and without giving too much away, could you give us like a sneak peek at what some of the themes are and some subject materials that the high-flying adventures of Captain Grief might share?
Basically, you'll know exactly where I'm going with the contents. Chapter 1, Captain Grief takes flight. Chapter 2, I can cry if I want to, damn it. Chapter 3, there's nothing wrong with cake. Chapter number 4, feeling sorry for yourself is actually a stage. Chapter 5, I got the power. Chapter 6, getting on with it isn't getting over it, but you have to start somewhere. Chapter 7, holidays can kick your ass. Chapter 8, grief fucks up your life, but you make it work. And then there's a little epilogue and a very nasty email from my superhero. We part ways. So generally it's what happens. And holidays are big. Like I've done workshops on holiday grief. And my big thing is you have to plan holidays. Don't let holidays plan you. And my grief was a gauntlet because Kara got sick in September, just after her birthday. She was okay. But by Halloween, she couldn't take our son out. By November 11th, she died on November 11th, she was done.
Wow.
My father died November 18th. My mother's birthday is November 23rd. And at this point, we want to crunch November up and throw it into the fire. My birth mother's birthday is November 14th. And then in January, my father's birthday is the 17th. So it's like I'm looking down the barrel of the year as soon as Halloween starts. And I know what it's going to be like because it's been 12 years that I've had this. I've changed a lot, and I know that sometimes the grief anvils will fall from the sky at any given moment when you hear a song, when you see a place, when you see a person. Those are the unexpected ones that you're just going to have to cry in public and get over, But Christmas, is coming. Thanksgiving is coming. Halloween, and it's a matter of, oh God, we go through this every year. And it's almost like at one part in the book, I'm grieving Kara as I'm sitting there watching the Santa Claus parade with my son. And then I called my sister and I said, this was the first year that I went through the anniversary of Dad's passing without thinking about it. And she's like, so did I. And of course, we had to deal with Kara's death just, a month prior to that. But it goes to show that the only thing that changes is how far away you are from the event. But it's time. I mean, time is irrelevant when the grief bomb hits. It really just, comes right back to you when you're, messy. Grief is messy, own it. But at least sometimes you can see some of the missiles, and you have to accept that you're going to feel however you're going to feel. And if you are trying to be polite for someone else, if you're trying to stiff upper lip it for someone else, don't. Because people get very judgy around grief and people get very uncomfortable. I get uncomfortable with grief. Sometimes I've ghosted people because I can't deal. This is a huge thing. And we kind of all need blanket forgiveness. Kara was 35 when she passed away. She was the hub of her family. I had a 1.5-year-old kid. I was so angry because we didn't even know what she had when she died. We didn't know until the autopsy. And it turned out we were up at my family's cabin, the one I told you about, where I'm pretty sure she breathed in the toxic mold called blastomycosis. It lasted for a period of 3 months, because 3
Wow.
months today, when she got sick in October, was when we were up there. And she had a weak respiratory system. So it basically created pneumonia, which she lived with for, 2.5 weeks. Went to the hospital and never came home because it just filled up her system. Ben and I were lucky because we were in the same place.
It's actually a very sad story in there, really.
I have to remind myself that it's my story. I've told it so many times. Oh yeah, that sucked. Life has to be lifed. You don't
Yeah.
get it.
That's quite a lot, really. You've shared a lot in there, very much a lot. And I like the fact that you could process the loss through writing memoirs. And again, I need to say I love the title of the book itself, The Eye-Flying Adventure of Captain Grief. And the subtitle is the most uncommon and quite catchy. A memoir about laughing in the face of death, which it's not something that is quite, people don't laugh in the face of death. It's about cry, tears, panic, quite a lot. So that subtitle is quite catchy. And I love the fact that you had to mention all of the chapters breakdown in Italy. That was quite great too. Now, I'd also like to ask you, Kelly, I'm also curious to know about how you show up in your writings. How exactly do you show up in your writings?
Memoir is basically a brutal act in honesty. It's not just with memoir, it's specifically with memoir, but it doesn't matter if I'm writing fiction. I could be writing about something that I've never talked about in the fantasy story, the fantasy series that I'm writing, and all of a sudden I'll be bawling because I'm writing my emotions into that character. And she's going through shit, and you unfortunately have to, your characters would want to kill you if they met you on the street. You have to give them something to deal with. Kara's death was giving me something to deal with. It pushed me out of the nest. It made me say, I have a 1.5-year-old child. It's go time. This is not a rehearsal.
Mm.
And it needed to be, when you write, there has to be urgency. So I got to play Captain Grief in a theatrical. I was fully spandexed and caped and masked in a theatrical performance, and
Wow.
it was called Her Story Counts, and it was a number of women, and it was to highlight the lack of diversity, mainly of women of color in theater. But I was asked to be there because of my experience with Kara, and she had I think Trey Anthony come in from To Kink in My Hair to coach us. And she said, okay, when you're diving into this, the most important question is, why does this matter? If you don't know why this story, why now, what's the point, then nobody else will understand that. So it's about authenticity. And if you don't go there, if you don't crack yourself open and say, what is the point of this? And get to that point and be super honest, because really it just starts with you and the page. If you can't be authentic, it will not resonate with an audience. It will not resonate with a reader. And it won't actually do the job of healing you. If you're pretending that nothing is wrong in your writing. I mean, you can do that. I have written a lot of silly poems, but why? What is so important? Even if it's a poem that's 5 sentences long, where is the heartbreak? Where is the joy? Where is the sorrow? Because that's what you want to put in there, because when your writing leaves your hands, it goes out to other people who are experiencing this.
Mm.
And what was it? When Sarah died, I looked it up, and there were 12 million people in America at that point who had gone through losing their partner. Not alone by any stretch of the imagination. And I want to create a place where I can laugh, where my friends and family can laugh, where my bigger community can laugh. Like, this is how I show up. Is also, I'm a holistic practitioner. So we use the phrase, how do you show up in terms of what is your service to the world? And I do reflexology, I do Reiki, I do aromatherapy, I heal, but I also tell the truth. My truth, because that's the only way that somebody else in Australia is going to pick this up and say, oh my God, how is this person writing about my life? Well, because they're the shit. And it's still shitty. I've been through.
How do you think overall your readers are with you being raw and real and authentic? I really believe that you have to be raw and real when you sit down and write, because I think that the reader picks that up. But how overall do you think the feedback you've gotten from the publication of the book and putting your emotions in that, and how that kind of comes out in your book? How do you think your readers are, and how do they relate to that?
Well, I could probably even quantify that for you with the amount of tissue that is used during my live performances. And it's kind of my MO now. I either make people go, and what did she say? And laugh, or I make people bawl constantly. You can't hear something like this and not be affected. I'm a mess when I hear other people's stories because they resonate so deeply with mine, and I can say, I have felt that, and it sucks. It sucks. But the way that you can survive that is to not turn it inward. You have to turn it outward. You have to express it in some way, or it sticks in there. Your body remembers everything, I can tell you as a healer. Don't let it become a permanent inhabitant of you. You have to give it a place to actually be beautiful. And even though it's beautiful, it has to have a space to be funny, to be real, to be angry. You have to let it go. And I was doing a grief talk with the bereaved families of Ontario, and the facilitator asked me, so our viewers want to know, how did you survive? Like, what did you do to get through this? And I thought about it, and I thought, no one's ever asked me a question like that pointedly. And I said, because I decided to. You either decide that you are going to deal with the fact that you're in a wheelchair, or you don't. You decide that you've been diagnosed with a chronic disease and it's just part of you and that's the way you are, that you are suddenly ADHD and just haven't known all your life. You haven't changed. So you either decide that you're going to work with us or you don't. And unfortunately, some people don't.
Mind over matter.
Some people self-hate, some people write.
I'm the writer. Hey, I almost lost my son twice in 1 week. And all I will say is I prayed my way through it. So
what else do you do? Either your faith gets stronger or you are just mad at the world. Is it really dependent on your resilience, on the support that's around you that you find, and 100% top of the list, your own motivation to say, I'm going to try this. I mean, and I know I was looking at this little ginger kid that knew nothing about the world and couldn't even speak. I'm not leaving him alone with this. I'm going to try. It took me about 5 months till the shock kind of weaned. But I can't leave this kid alone in this. I am suddenly now all he has. So I think people who have kids have a bit of an advantage. They have a chance because they have to show up for somebody else. And my dad, I know how he might feel for the rest of his life, because now he not only lost a parent, but he never knew her to begin with. He doesn't remember what she sounds like, what she feels like. That is depth of grief that I will never understand. And there's certainly a reason why kids become non-linguistic when they have trauma that early, which is what happened to my son. He had a speech impediment because of this. So
This is quite impressive, really. I've been enjoying your take on it and all you've mentioned so far. I'd also like to ask you if you could tell us what publishing is like for a published author like yourself. Are there any challenges you've encountered in the process of writing this book and ever since the book has been published? And also, can you tell us about what your writing process looks like?
this is not published. This is self-published, which is a whole other ball of wax. I spent about 2 years getting phenomenal feedback from literary agents and publishing companies that said, "This is great, but we have no idea what to do with this. This is grief. This is comedy. This is queer. This is a pop culture." When it comes to publishing, I've been told this is all about where would you put this book on a bookshelf in a bookstore. It has to be really clear. And it was pointed out to me when I met the person from Iguana Publishing, that everything that, like my book, has been self-published. So a publisher would look at this and say, "But I can't market it. It's great, but I can't market it." So I said, screw this. On the 11th year of Kara's passing, I did what Iguana Publishing suggested. I started a crowdfunding, and I raised $5,000 in a month, and that went towards the publication of my book. And it became a reality because it got to the point where it's like, I can't hold on to this anymore. This has to be out in the world. This is how I am of service. So that needed to start. So it was a long journey, learned, I had to learn a bit about marketing and say those T's and those I's were not crossed. So that worked against me. But I think what I'm working on now, it's going to be, it's not going to be like this unless there's a Flying Adventures #2, which is completely possible because she's gone nowhere. It'll be easier to publish, but what I've been told is you've got to go to the literary agents first because a publisher is not going to look at something twice. It goes on the mush pile or they're interested, and that's it. And unfortunately, it's all about the query letter. You can't even make it through the gate with that. And this is why this is super, super competitive. And why I thought, well, I have a whole group of people who know and love Captain Grief. They will support me to get this written, and they did. It was then one of the most amazing experiences in my life. Talk about the universe coming into balance here. And my process, well, because I write about my family and my father has passed away, and Kara's grandpa has just passed away recently. All of my grandparents. So I'm a Reiki master, and I'm also a medium. So my process is reading to dead people a lot. They make a captive audience because hey, Dad, I'm writing something about you, and it'll be like, oh, wrote a Christmas card. That's what I did.
Kelly.
Wrote him a Christmas card. And he was like, "I didn't do that." I'm like, "Shut up. This is my Christmas card." And then, he said,
"Oh, goodness.
What else can I give you? I can give you my stories, and I am attached to you. And I can tell you out there, for anybody who's lost anybody, they go nowhere. Why would they? Why would they not want to be involved and to know what is happening in the life of their family?" He was so excited when I got pregnant. It was ridiculous. So and Karen knew this about me. We would have conversations about how we would haunt one another. And I tell you, I've been so mad at her sometimes for some of the stuff that I know she's done. So they don't, I think that makes it why it's even more important for me to keep writing about them, because it's my connection to them. The life that I had with them. This is how I celebrate them. This is how I celebrate my relationship with them. And I need to write to be well, but I need to write to make the grief more about the love than the loss,
Wow.
essentially.
Would you like to share a paragraph from your book or a sentence or a quote, a tagline, something that you think would resonate with the listeners?
I went through and I did ones that I think you might like. They're quite short. But I was going to say, do you want funny or do you want sad?
Oh, I'm all about funny. That's just me. I'm I like funny. But even though I write some things that are dramatic, but still.
How about a list? Because Captain Grief and I make a lot of lists because this is like again, part self-help. So one of the ways, the first list that I wrote in this blog writing workshop was 9 ways to follow up the sentence, my spouse died, to avoid food wasting and being called a jerk. So would you like me to read you the 9 ways?
Sure.
Okay. Number 1. My spouse died, but don't worry. I have a freezer stocked with single portion leftovers, and I carry a puppy in my purse at all times. Number 2. My spouse died, but don't worry about that really insensitive thing that you just said. It hurt way less than actually losing my spouse. Okay, that one probably only make you feel better, but hey, sometimes that's what it's all about. Number 3, my spouse died, but my family's here, and I'm here, and that mime who hugged me on the streetcar this morning is here, but I could have done without him. Number 4, my spouse died, but now I can use all her socks to make puppets. Giggle.
Oh my goodness.
I amuse myself on a regular basis. I need no entertainment. My spouse died, but now I can sit on my front lawn and put a penny in the can for the widder. Mama needs a new pair of shoes, or maybe singing lessons. Number 6, my spouse died, but now I can make room in the closet for a buttload of shoes. Number 7, my spouse died, but now I can watch what I want on television. When my toddler is asleep, I can eat junk if I don't eat it in front of my toddler, and sleep in a star formation in the middle of my bed if my toddler doesn't wake up and refuse to go back into his crib. How has my life changed? Hasn't changed at all. Okay, 8, my spouse died, but now I can enjoy all the things in life that she was not a fan of, like chick movies and chick flicks and period dramas that happen to have a lot of romance and drama and a lot of chicks. 9, my spouse died, but don't worry, I am not on the couch. I'm actually sitting on my couch now in the same tear-stained pajamas. I'm wearing my pajama bottoms. Oh dear. I've been wearing for 7 weeks with takeout on speed dial where they don't even ask me for my name and order. They just bring the grub. No, I'm up and I'm groomed, at least the top half of me, and I'm talking to you. Aren't you impressed?
That's an amazing dark humor you've got in there. I think this genre in poetry is classified as dark humor. And what you just read to me feels like poetry. It's called dark humor. Somebody died. I have so many socks to myself I can wear. Or somebody died. Oh yeah, now I can use their car. I watched a documentary on the internet of how some people made a joke that, oh, dad is dead. Now I can drive.
With the car, if they don't pay their tickets, they remain unpaid.
Absolutely. So you have to pay that. That was so funny, really. That's they call it dark humor.
It is so comfortable with gallows humor in my family. It's what cynicism has helped us survive a little. You have to, because that's the only thing that's going to balance out how truly shitty this is. Like I didn't even know I was funny till Kara died.
I think you have to have a sense of humor, otherwise you're in trouble.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I worked in the mental health field, and I don't know. It's what helps balance your life out and your perspective and everything. So
And I think that actually helps as well to balance the pain, the sadness. Because in one of your answer to the question asked initially, you mentioned where is the heartbreak, where is the sorrow, where is the pain. I think incorporation of humor help you to relieve yourself of the grief, of the pain, of the heartache, of the sorrow encapsulated with the loss of a loved ones.
Like, don't forget, there's all those stages of grief. And I mean, the sad one that I was going to read you called is called Regrets About Granola. And it's just about the one thing that I did not do for Kara that I wish that I had done,
Yeah.
that I wish with all my heart that I could take back. And all I could do to alleviate myself of that guilt was to write about it and to have her sitting there going, I'm like, I know, this sucks for both of us.
That's amazing, really.
It's funny that you say that because I know my grandmother didn't do one thing for her mom before she passed away because she was diabetic. And it was something just as simple as they had to count out the grapes because she was diabetic and she couldn't have too much sugar. And she wanted a blueberry muffin. And 30 years later, I remember the conversation about the blueberry muffin. I remember the conversation about the grapes. So it's that little bit of guilt and stuff like that. But as a person, we have to help ourselves get through it to keep going. And I totally agree. Children are what gets you through it, and your faith and everything. But my gosh, yeah, tough subject, Kelly.
Very
Yeah,
tough.
but
Very
that's
tough.
myself. If you don't allow yourself to go into that shadow, if you don't allow yourself to actually, what did it feel like to feel so guilty that you just want to die?
Mm.
You have to stay with that feeling. And it's like, honestly, walking through a fire, and you'll get to the other side, but you can't avoid the burn. You
Yes.
have to feel the emotions. You get over it. And you're going to have to walk that flaming gauntlet again and again and again, but it gets easier. Because if you
Absolutely.
can't tell yourself, God, I feel guilty for not making that goddamn granola. I wish that I had done this instead of saying I was too tired or too sad or too angry at you to do this small thing for you that I could have done, and I lost the chance to do that for you. And I have to forgive myself. And I had to be able to say that. I had to be able to write it. And I had to be able to express it to her.
Mm-hmm.
It's relieving.
It's like
Thank
this
you.
urge. It can't stay in there. It will
Mm.
only hurt you to keep tucking it back under.
Yeah.
That's a way to not ever have peace. And I have a long life ahead of me. A peaceful, happy, funny, intense, meaningful life.
Mm.
Otherwise, what the crap am I here for?
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you. There's some emotion coming into it already. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that. And just in case we have some viewers who are watching your recitation, because I love it wholeheartedly, and who have listened to the interview so far and would love to get a copy of your book. On what platform is it available on for purchase?
Amazon.ca. Depending on where you are, Amazon.com. Just look up The High Flying Adventures of Captain Grief, and it's
Mhm.
there as a Kindle, as a paperback, as a hardcover. And there will be other events that I have that people will be able to, find online. And CaptainGrief.com is still my website, and I've got current content on that. Captain Grief is still a big jerk. She will always be, but she is my writing partner for this. So CaptainGrief.com, where all my stuff will be that comes up in the next little bit. I applied to Camp Widow to go fully Captain Grief and do a performance for them. So there'll be more coming. But for now, I'm hoping to be able to sell my book on kellywilk.ca. But for now, it's just findable on Amazon. And I do, anybody who wants to join the grief group, the community, I have a Facebook called The High Flying Adventures of Captain Grief. And that's where I do stupid things, funny things, memes, really deep conversations, a chance for people who have lost somebody to say, today's the anniversary of my dad's death, or I miss this, or does anybody feel this way on this day? create space for people because that's what I
Ah,
needed myself.
thank you so much, Kelly. Thank you, really. And I left a link in the description part of this interview where interested viewers can get a copy of Kelly Cookbook directly on Amazon, Barnes& and Nobles, on our website, and also on other platforms. I also left link to our social media pages for possible followings. So thank you so much, Kelly, for accepting the invitation to be featured on P English Literature. I'm also this is more than awesome, quite great, quite exciting. Having a conversation around your book. It's quite emotional, a bit of humor, a bit of some emotion in there, and I really enjoyed it so much. Thank you so much for coming on.
It was nice having you, Kelly.
Yeah.